I guess I will get us started. So, uh, to start off, yeah, you can go ahead to the next one. Thank you. Dear colleague, if you'll click through, sometimes the bravest and most important thing you can do is just show up.
Thank you. Thank you for showing up for your students, for your staff, for your community, and now hopefully for yourself. You have carried others through their heaviest moments, showing up with compassion, courage, and strength. Your impact is immeasurable, and the love and care you have poured into your community will continue to ripple far beyond what you can see. Our hope is that, first and foremost, this resource contributes to your healing. And we also hope that the checklists, reflection prompts, and resources shared within support your growth. As educators, we know that self reflection, when done with care, compassion, and curiosity, leads to new learning.
And finally, we want to remind you that we are the leaders that we've been looking for.
That brings us to the what and the welcome. When the three of us entered the capstone or the fellowship, we had a bunch of different ideas for things that we wanted to focus on, a lot related to school suicide postvention. And what we had initially landed on, you can click through, was the idea to do some focus groups with students around care and care rooms. I'd had the experience of working with some youth and talking about when crisis happens in their world, and they just kind of rolled their eyes at, yeah, we know, care room's going to be open, it's going to be there a few days, whatever. And that whatever isn't necessarily what we want to be the felt sense of a care room. We want folks to get what they need out of it, and that shows me that it wasn't a need. So we had started some conversation around doing those focus groups. But given the world that we're living in 2025, short kind of time span for the ability to do really good outreach and build connections and relationships with students and their schools, we had some reconsiderations on, is this going to feel like the most important conversation to students right now, especially if in our positionalities, we can't really promise that change will happen from those focus group conversations. So we decided to pivot to figure something else out. And as we did to put together this resource guide, we kept coming back to the conversation of why does the resource guide feel important to us? And what is it about this that's resonating now? So you can go ahead and click. We ended up with the realization and reflection that all three of us work at systems levels. So we'll introduce ourselves in a minute, and we only have little peeks into groundwork and what is happening in classrooms or in school buildings. And we hear from our colleagues what they see and what they feel. And so we were thinking on a systems level, what is it that we could offer? What are some ways that we can reach into those situations? So to give you an idea of what the systems level work that we do, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Kris Bifulco. I use she and they pronouns. I'm the Suicide Prevention Programs Manager at the Association of Oregon Community Mental Health Programs. And I've spent the last 5 years supporting the postvention after suicide death response in the state of Oregon. So providing a lot of support to folks in individual counties, in school districts and individual schools, but really looking at that kind of bird's eye view of what's happening. I'll pass it over to Nole to introduce himself.
Hi, y'all. Thank you for being here. My name is Nole. I use he, him pronouns. I work at the Oregon Department of Education for about 2 years now, supporting ADDIES Act, which is legislation passed in 2019 for suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention policy and plans in K-12 schools across Oregon. And truly an honor to be in that role and to be working with amazing colleagues, some of whom are on this call, and to also be partnering with my friends and colleagues, Kris and Ritu. Such an honor. Thank you for having me. Ritu.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ritu, she, hers pronouns, And I work for Eugene School District 4J, overseeing our prevention initiatives as it pertains to suicide, sexualized violence, and substance misuse and abuse. So we're fun. And my background has been for the last 13-ish years doing suicide prevention, crisis response, violence prevention advocacy in education. And I really feel honored to be able to continue doing this work with lovely colleagues. Some I know, some I get to work with more closely here in Oregon and within a K-12 setting. And because of all of our lived experiences and professional backgrounds, we really were thinking about where we are right now positionally. That, as Kris mentioned, we are doing more systems level work than on the ground. And so what we wanted to focus on is thinking about how we can shift the narrative from care response to this concept of aftercare, especially being informed by our own experiences in care response, as well as supporting others on the ground now. And we heard so many varied experiences with care rooms from students, from staff, from family even. And we're trying to reflect on what does that look like within a system, right? Where we can be involved in providing actual sustainable care. And recognizing some themes around secondary trauma, compassion fatigue, and the ways that that can actually lead to institutional betrayal in schools and for care providers. The way that I think about there can be an influx of resources right after a crisis, but what happens after a week, after a month, a year later? What are the structural ways that information may or may not be passed on? Talking to families about my child died, 3 years ago, but this year they would have graduated. How can we provide that care, right? And that's why I know for us, that we really appreciated redirecting from, and Nole, Kris, and I have talked about how we're very logistics people and have a lot of feelings. And this year has given us the opportunity to sit back into reflection and what we needed, which is why we started with, and thanks to Bree, pictures of what we needed when we were kids in school systems, right? And so we really came back to this question of what care is needed, not only during but also after the immediate crisis response. And as has been shared in the resource guide that Leora was talking about, we were also wanting to think through how polycrisis shows up. So how are we in our personal professional roles able to show up for the folks that need us and then also for ourselves? And often we can get stuck in the checklists, but what about our sense of reflection and self-care too? So I'll pass it to Nole to tell you what that has meant.
So from there, we thought about how to create a visualized resource guide for staff leading care room responses in their schools amidst and after crisis, and additionally with reflective touch points and resources for students and other staff along the way. Our hope is that it's an encouraging, first and foremost, encouraging quick start guide where folks can take what they need and access specific things, whether it's related to reflection or resources, and that those would be tools for connecting, reviewing, restoring, and integrating trauma-informed practices in the care room and beyond. And this is, I hope, I know that Kris and Ritu and I are committed to continuing to partner together. And so this is just the first piece. So I want to talk a little bit about what we are visioning, some ideas that we're visioning on how we're going to extrapolate this forward past today into tomorrow and beyond. So one example that I want to talk about is that I partner with a couple other crisis response flight team leaders throughout the state to support a community practice of other leaders throughout the state. And Kris and Ritu and I are hoping that this guide and their expertise will be a component of that community of practice going forward. And so thinking about how that will roll in both technologically and logistically, but also as part of that community of practice, sharing out, highlighting, and this work can feel so isolating that community of practice is really supportive. And so we're thinking about ways to integrate this into that existing community of practice next school year.
Yeah, and building off of that, what I was excited to think about is how we can expand what support and resources look like. And so we really had a lot of fun trying to find ways that we can think of what visualization means. And so could we now also offer videos and audio, or even something small like, hey, classroom teacher that has to now go back and be present for all your students. Here's a video that you can play that is allowing you to have a moment to ground yourself and model that with your students. So I'm really excited for all of our ideation to be something that we can share back with y'all.
And we do still plan to circle back to that initial idea of these youth focus groups. And I wanted to add that part of why I feel that it's so important to hear about what care is happening or needed in the care room and outside of it is informed by my own experience as a young queer person, where school is not necessarily the care space. And where when we have friends and community members die, not just by suicide, but by any means, we are often need to take care of ourselves because we can sometimes get locked out of our rituals of mourning and traditions that help us transition from one space to the other with and without that person. So there might be something that might be something that our students want to tell us about, how they take care of each other, what activities they're doing that they want supportive adults to know about and to be able to ask them about, or just to be aware of. So we have a couple of other state level partners that we're planning to work with to come back around and ask these questions and really find out, is there a way that we can better inform how we hold space in those care rooms and what we might be looking for outside of the care room?
So with all that in mind, we're going to pause, and we pause in our resource. This is a screenshot in the gray there that we're asking folks to pause in our resource, but also literally right now, we're going to ask everyone to pause. Before diving in, we're going to take a deep breath, and then another, and we're going to center our humanity. And before moving forward, we're going to make sure we're grounded. Taking another deep breath. And then we're going to think about moving forward and taking what's right from this. And we're going to be reminded that you are the right person to be leading this work in your community. And thank you. So with that in mind, we thought maybe we could dive in a little bit into the visualized guide. Ritu or Kris, do either of you want to talk about the homepage, or you want me to?
Go for it.
So you can see here on the homepage that a lot of this is screenshotted in our presentation, that the site's intended to be a visualized resource guide for staff leading care room responses amidst school crisis, and that we're focused on integrating trauma-informed practices in the care room and beyond. And we encourage folks to start with what we called our Dear Colleague letter, which you heard sort of at the beginning of our presentation. And then from there, we have some additional resources and guides that we want to highlight and talk about briefly here, starting with the page that we, I forget what this page is titled, Aftercare Making Meaning. Ritu?
Yeah, thanks, Nole. Yeah, and so, we wanted to offer both a space for why we're moving towards this language of aftercare and philosophy. The nerdy side in us, we're like, okay, let's find pedagogy that we can be informed by, and also in being in a space of reflection and creativity, a non-crisis related example to talk about healing. And so we came up with the experience of getting a tattoo. and what immediate care looks like versus long-term care, and then also all of the spaces in between of where we in our personal professional lenses can inform and guide that practice. And for this aspect that is more around having clear tangibles, having a one-sheeter, or actually it's a two-sheeter, around myths concerns we've heard already from staff and students, and offering what is the language we've heard, what is the reality, and we have all these citations at the end, and also some language of how you can respond. And so this can be that tangible we can give out. And so offering again that place of resource, reflection, and support throughout. And finally, I'll pass to Kris around what it looks like.
So we wound up with 6 different domains, uh, self, staff, and student, and each of those has 2 separate categories. So you can see this as self-resources. We also have self-reflection, similar staff resources, staff reflection, student resources, student reflection. And this is a blend of existing uh, documents that help us through crisis. So one being that guide that Leora spoke about before, but then also things that we've self-created from what we've seen and learned from working in crisis, like the tiny rituals and emotional maintenance flyer there. That one is something that we, as crisis workers and working with other colleagues in this space, we all have our little things that we do to transition from crisis world into, okay, I have to go home and feed the cats and be okay for my cats or my kids or my friends. And they're very small, simple things that you can do, like taking a look up to the sky is something that my colleague Kris told me that he does to remind himself that the world is bigger than the crisis he's been enmeshed in for the rest of the day. So when he gets to his car at the end of the day, he takes that look up. So we have in all of those domains just a couple of resources here right now. This is very much a draft version, but there are things that have resonated with us and things that we hope will resonate with other folks as you're going through either preparing for crisis, coming out of crisis, and being able to translate some of the why to some people who might not be fully enmeshed in crisis work. Um, I'll pause there. Do we want to share a link with folks so that they can kind of scroll through, and then we can have a chat?
No, I'll let you deal with the tech side of that. Thank you. Yeah, and really kind of to close this out, one of the things we also recognize is in crisis, sometimes it's really helpful to have a few things with what we need to know. So we would love feedback of how this can be useful for you. So what we came up with for right now is the brief description, who it's for, what kind of modality, how long it would take, and why. But if y'all have other thoughts, this is really the time for us to learn from you as well. So thank you, and I will stop sharing screen.